Today, we're talking to Ronell Smith, content strategist at RS Consulting. He's got some great insights into content marketing and what it takes to get chosen in the realm of digital marketing. From both as an employee as well as a marketing a firm, I mean, there's some strong parallels in this space. So welcome back to The Edge. Thanks for listening. I'm Aaron Sparks. You can check us out at from the show's producer standpoint at sitestrategist.com. We're an Indianapolis-based digital marketing firm focused on cost-effective web design with Google, Yahoo, and Bing search engine marketing management that not only provides great rankings on searches, but actually translates into sales. Who'da thunk, right? So if you're interested, come in, have a cup of coffee, and let's talk about your online success. So, Ronell, welcome to The Edge.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Ronell, we need you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
I'm Superman I'm just kidding. Although my daughter did tell me last night that I really do believe you're Superman, but you're not that special, Dad. But anyway.
No, Ronell, let's really talk about that. Isn't Batman a better character than Superman?
I've never been a Batman. I don't know why I was fascinated with Superman because I was.
Ronell, you're breaking up there. I'm sorry. We're probably going to have to cut this short. Seriously?
I like Batman. I do like Batman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for getting on board.
Batman as a person.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I call myself a content strategist, but what I always tell people is when people ask what it is that you do, and I used to say help people get found by Google, and I changed that last year to getting chosen by Google, and I think about that from the perspective of most of the clients I work with are brands who come into content marketing because they know they need SEO, so they typically have some understanding of SEO. Or they've worked with an SEO or SEO firm, but they don't really understand the true role and value of content.
Right.
And so that's where I typically come in. And so I started saying what I do is help brands get chosen. And the example I make is if when you click on when you put a query in, and as the results show up, you want to be the brand that's chosen. You don't want to be the brand that just shows up. Right. And I think so many brands get stuck there. You want to get clicked, so to speak.
Exactly. You know what? That actually breaks through the threshold, and we commonly hear it of just wanting to get high ranks, right? Yeah. Well, that mentality, and albeit I'm glad to be able to see companies far and wide actually pay attention to where they're ranking. That's fantastic. But it's just not about being ranking on that keyword. It's about what you're doing with that search engine result listing. Are you entreating your guests to take that next step and be chosen? You're absolutely right. So there's a lot more to it than just what your position is on the top of the ranks.
And I kind of learned that the hard way when I first started. I started my own business consulting. It was kind of all over the board. I was in content, I was in PR, I was in branding, and I kind of came over to the online marketing side of thing in 2011. Set up my own website, started an online newsletter, a members only newsletter online. And I had to learn SEO really, really quickly because I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it stood for. I didn't know what it did. But by 2012, I started getting clients. And my biggest client was talking about ranking for the specific keywords. It was a very, very competitive. The vertical he was working was very, very competitive.
Right.
And he had an agency that I worked alongside, and I was helping them with web design and the overall content. But his keywords started to rank over time. But he didn't understand what that meant, and I didn't fully recognize what it meant. But it didn't lead to conversions. What was happening was his keywords. He was ranking for those keywords, and he was on the first page, and he was in the first 10 results.
Right.
But nobody was clicking on it. And so he started asking, why am I spending all this money? Why am I doing what you told me to do? And it's not leading to the result. And I said, you said you wanted your keywords to rank. And so brands often don't recognize this disconnect. And so that started me to say, I really don't give a rat's patootie if your keywords rank. I ultimately want you to be successful as a brand. And that likely means us doing some very, very mundane, and likely painful stuff to get you to become a more viable, vibrant brand. And that's not going to entail at first your keywords ranking.
No, and you're absolutely right. There is that the concept. I mean, there's a maturation from the business community understanding what it really means even just understanding a brand concept and understanding that there's a relationship that you're needing to forge, not just these quick key concepts that can mean something collectively, but I mean, just a pursuit of a rank or a pursuit of engagement on, a particular amount of retweets on a social media series of posts.
Yeah.
I mean, all these are key performance indicators, right? But they're not the big picture. So you're in a position of educating people on the big picture. Is that what that's what I'm hearing?
It is, and I really enjoy that. And so one of the things I struggled with early on was I didn't know enough to be in the weeds. And then when I did know enough to be in the weeds, I found that I didn't enjoy teaching people helping people with what they already knew.
Right.
And what I meant by that was I really felt like my role was to condition brands for what success looked like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When you have a client that sits there and they realize they're paying you a significant amount of money a month, and they buy into that it's going to take time. You have to be in your mind saying, okay, what are some quick wins? But you can't allow those quick wins to pull you or them away from what will be lasting success.
Absolutely.
To attain that lasting success, and that's going to require you to do some different things. And what I love is getting people at the C level to understand the true role of content, because this fascinates me. No matter who I'm talking to,
right,
whether it's at church or in a grocery store aisle, they have some understanding of SEO.
Right.
But
now they do, finally.
yeah. It amazes me. It's like even now people will say, "So you do SEO?" And I'm like, "No." And in my back of my mind, I'm like, "That's not an affront to me. It's just not what you need."
Right.
And so I've always likened it to everybody wants to be a marathoner just because they bought a pair of running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm all of a sudden ready for this. And so when I go in, I'm able to talk to them the big picture, and I also do to highlight some at the granular level. Here's some very, very specific things that you should be doing, and here's why. And I just love getting my hands dirty. I love seeing the light come on for brands. And basically that happens because I realized that unless you have some sweat equity, unless they have some skin in the game,
right,
it's going to be tough for them to stick with it and stick to it.
No, absolutely.
I've worked with a lot of SEO firms and a lot of SEO practitioners, most of which were really, really great. But when it came time, when I've worked with agencies are always thinking, or most times thinking about the money that comes in and keeping that money from going away. And that has a lot to do with quick wins.
Mm-hmm.
And unless I've developed a tolerance for this, unless you're willing to talk to me about the things you're willing to do to attain lasting success, we're probably not going to have a great working relationship. And I've said that to agencies, I've said that to brands. And I just had to step away from working with agencies because I didn't see that enough. I can't focus on quick wins because it's not going to happen overnight. And if my name's associated with it, I want to see lasting success.
Okay, I mean, yeah, and to capitalize on your argument there, or your position there, literally, it has to do with a level of knowledge that brand or that company actually understands in the space of digital marketing and brand positioning. There's a maturation there of understanding what it really means. There's an education pursuit I think every marketer has to actually present this level of education and this information in a way that those companies that they're dealing with can understand, right? But on top of it, there's also a lot of baggage that you are experiencing with the last agencies that they worked with or the last consultants that they worked with, because maybe they didn't do what you're trying to do in this space. Maybe they were just focused on key ranks because they couldn't do everything else that they needed to do.
Right. And people are, so one of the things you have to find, and I'm big on adherence. It's if you can't stick to it, you're probably not going to be able to have lasting success. So the example I always use is if somebody told me that I could look like The Rock if I ate, watermelon and cantaloupe every day. I hate watermelon. I hate cantaloupe. I know quickly I'm not going to look like, even if I didn't want to look like The Rock, I know what I'm up against, so to speak.
Right.
So it's finding a level of tolerance. So when an agency comes in and says, okay, here's what we can get some quick wins on, my job would then typically be, okay, what do they have a tolerance for? It goes beyond the 1 or 2 blog posts. Are you willing to put together, to commit to put together a content strategy roadmap? Are
Right.
you disciplined enough to focus on the personas? Are you disciplined enough to focus on the user journey path? Are you willing to do those things that are going to lead to lasting success? But it's not going to be framed that way for me. It's going to be framed as, okay, here are the things we need to be doing at this point. And if you're not, I just think it highlights for you what's possible, and that's where the rock analogy comes in. And that's fine if you don't ever want to look like the rock, or if you don't want to be successful. But we have to, you have to understand, just doing enough to get by is very likely not going to lead you to.
Absolutely. So just and the weight loss and the getting fit analogy is completely apropos. You have to be disciplined, and you have to be able to weather short-term losses sometimes. Yeah. But not be able to see the expectation, the results that you are really anticipating, you know? And we talk about that on a regular basis from the SEO approach, because that's a long-term, it's almost like the stock portfolio concept, is that you got some short win type of things, PPCs in that space, right? But even that takes time to really, to really improve and optimize. So let me back up here for a second, Ronell, because we didn't even tell our listeners who you are and what your history is. So can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of where you've been in your career?
Yeah. Well, it's funny to tell the story, but I actually got started in college in online marketing by accident. I started an online toy store. So it turns out my would-be wife had always wanted to own a toy store. And we met in college, and she got to know this guy who was willing to sell his toy store to her when she graduated college. And so I kind of assisted her throughout this process of finding these collectible toys. And never mind the fact that eBay was very, very popular then in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And then right after that, when I graduated college, I did postgraduate research in psychology. Then I did I did my time in newspapers, so to speak. And so I really, really developed a love for business. And so business strategy is something that always appealed to me, even as a kid,
right?
Understanding how things work. And after that, I worked for ESPN for 6 years as a B2B editor for a publication. And then right after that, in late 2010, early 2011, I started my own business, started consulting. And at first, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but truthfully, a guy mentioned to me, he said, really hot field is online marketing. I didn't know what he was talking about, online marketing, because that meant something different to me at the time. And I just kind of immersed myself in it accidentally by starting my own website. And so that's when I had to learn SEO and familiarize myself with it. And then, content marketing and all that. And so I noticed over time that I kind of became a curmudgeon, in that I don't see things the way that people typically see them. And I developed a sense of, here's what a business owner should know and do, as opposed to here's what a marketer may influence you to know and do. And that's not anti-marketer. It's not anti-SEO, certainly. But I think sometimes when we're all in the same room, we don't often speak the same language. What we understand and what we share with them isn't how they typically understand it.
Absolutely.
And I love talking to people who are passionate about being successful in business through whatever means. It may not be SEO that they need. It may not be content may not get them to where they need to be. But I love being able to highlight that holistically, what a successful business looks like, and then highlight for them the role of content.
Excellent. Well, so you also have some history with Moz, right?
I do. So my biggest client and my favorite, I work with Moz as I help them. I call myself the content velociraptor. That's a title.
That's a bold statement, man.
It's funny because I was goofing around one day, and they had this. Cyrus was there, and Cyrus had this really cool title. And I was on Twitter, and I was like, "I'm the content velociraptor." And so I put it on my associates page. So I'm an associate for Moz, and I helped them with some of their content products. And I helped them with Moz content, helped them promote it and market it. And I do everything from write on the blog to help them with some of their what do you call it? With MozCon. I
all the conferences.
and with some of their big content pieces like the social media guide. So what I do now is basically help them do the things that are going to help them drive qualified traffic to their products, to their blog, to their website.
Right.
And that excites me because it's part and parcel of what I enjoy doing. I love doing things that are going to enable a brand to be successful. And I'm fortunate, and then I get to work with Rand and the entire SEO team and just the whole brand. And that's great for me as a consultant. When you don't have a team to draw from, you kind of pull in these disparate elements from disparate teams.
Right.
Well, having a central team like Moz to help me, it really feeds me in a bunch of areas that I wouldn't necessarily be knowledgeable about, whether it's email marketing, paid, UX, IA. I'm really thankful that Moz has really invited me in and kind of let me look under the hood everywhere and find a lot of things to do that I'm excited about. So it's been great. It's an awesome organization.
Yeah, it is. They're very good, and we had Rand on a little while ago, and it was
Rand and Dr. Pete
Pete,
yeah.
and they're doing incredible stuff regularly over there, and the community is fantastic. Obviously, it was a shame whenever they changed their path there with the Moz community, but I mean, there's so much goodwill coming out of that organization. They're going to be on the rebound here and bringing a lot of people along with the ride.
Yeah, you mentioned in the pre-show that you had a blog coming out on Moz. Is it today or tomorrow or sometime?
Yeah, it got pushed back.
Okay.
We had one fall through for next week, and they said, "Hey, can you mind if we push yours back?" I was like, And then I thought about you guys, but I was like, whenever you want to use it, it's fine by me.
We'll certainly throw the link on there.
Sure. Just what's kind of the topic about?
That it's on email outreach. So Rand has done a blog. He's done several Whiteboard Fridays about email outreach and how it's not done very effectively and how it can be done more effectively. And I worked in an agency for almost a year, and I was so cold to outreach as a vehicle for getting links, mainly because of naivete. I just didn't know. But when I thought about it and I had to do some of it or had to train people to do it, I realized it was just a hidden gem that was so badly abused. And so I just been thinking about it for a couple of years. And my daughter kind of gave me this idea. You'll see it begins with kind of a funny story, that my daughter wrote. But I feel strongly about outreach. I feel strongly about all areas of online market. There's really not an area of online market I'm not interested in that I don't take time to learn about. Because where I sit, it's about helping a brand be successful. And that doesn't mean I'm going to be the expert in the room on that topic.
Right.
But typically, as the content guy, I'm the person that's gluing it all together for the brand, because it's moving through content. As I tell people, they're not optimizing a blank page typically.
Right.
So that's what I enjoy, knowing a little bit about everything. And I've been very fortunate. I've had a ton of amazing mentors in this industry. It's such a giving. SEOs are some of the most passionate. Yes, they can be egotistical.
No,
but they can be some of the most giving people.
We have no idea what you're talking about there. Well, and let me ask you this, kind of going into another direction and concept I wanted to talk about. Those SEOs are no longer just siloed in technical SEO and optimization on pages. Everybody is being brought in their own unique specialties into the conversation of the buyer's journey, of content marketing and user experience, right? And what the content experience is. You focus on that, and I'd like to understand. I mean, first and foremost, executing a content strategy is bar none the most important thing to start this journey. Correct?
Right. Yes. And I say that apprehensively because most people will hear that and they'll think, I have to have a content strategist, or I have to have these elements of a content strategy. And to use the diet analogy again, it's like when people hear you have to eat a bunch of vegetables.
Right.
Well, you don't have to eat a bunch of vegetables. You may just have to eat less junk food. And it's the same thing with content marketing. I feel like, and this is just my opinion, I feel like part of the reasons brands aren't successful and that marketers aren't more successful
Mm-hmm.
is because most of us don't truly understand what content is and the role it provides. Like, for example, when I talk to somebody about SEO, they get it, right? But when I start talking about content strategy, I have to explain
Yep.
what is.
Right.
And I realize that's a problem because we should be focused on what it does,
Mm-hmm.
not what it is. For example, when people say to me or express to me that they have some understanding of SEO, it's not that they know SEO, they don't,
Right.
but they know what it does.
There it is. Yep. I'll
With
agree with you.
content strategy, they can understand pretty easily that it guides them.
Mhm.
They've heard about the personas. They
Right.
probably vaguely know about roadmaps and they understand how it ties in with editorial calendar, but they don't understand truly what it does. So they know what it is, they don't understand what it does, and that's I feel like is our problem. So what I've stopped doing is focusing on explaining what it is and highlighting
Excellent.
what it does. And to my mind, it begins with the content experience in getting people to understand. And I've started this saying this week is content's a noun. It's a person, place, or thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not words on a page. It's not images. It's
Right.
not videos. It's not these myriad graphics. It's your people.
Right.
That's the thing nobody wants to talk about. When everybody talks about it's a thing. Okay, if it's just things like graphics or words, what is it when we talk about content is everything that touches the sun, everything under the sun?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the first encounter with the brand is at a brick and mortar is an employee.
Yep.
How is that employee with the logo on his shirt not content? How is that a content opportunity?
Absolutely.
When we talk about it being a place, when we talk about localized content, how is that not highlighting a place? And yes, these myriad things like words and images. So I think that to me personally is what I've gone back to and that I realize has been a huge disconnect. And it is a huge disconnect. When I read content strategy work now,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're failing the industry because we're not expressing to them, hey, it's everything. You can talk, tell me what it's not. You say sales copy. How is it not? How does that not fit under content? How is that not content? I feel like it's go.
No, keep on going. Keep on going.
So to me, I read a book. I read every one of his books. Richard Feynman, who's widely considered the smartest person to ever walk the earth. He was the scientist at the Los Alamos Project when Einstein and all these other guys were alive, who was recognized as the brightest person at the Los Alamos Project, building the first nuclear bomb. But he had a book which is on my shelf now, and he talks about why do you care what other people think? But his father taught him something very, very key.
Mm-hmm.
To not focus on what something is, but to focus on what it does. And the examples he used was a bird. Don't focus on the sounds that it makes to learn what it is. Focus on what it's doing to understand what it is. And vice versa. And I think as content strategists and as brand builders and as SEO professionals, if we can stop thinking about
The tactic.
what it is
Right.
and what it does. Now, I'll say this. Now, SEOs are great at that. SEOs are great at talking about, whether you're explaining on-page SEO or off-page, they can have, okay, here's how this performs. Here's how this will help your website perform better. But most content practitioners, it's, words, images.
Right.
And so as a brand, you hear expense. You don't hear what it does. And that's problematic.
So really mapping what you're wanting to achieve,
Right.
and what you're wanting the path. I mean, it's literally the pathways to a conversion, pathways to a brand experience, and understanding that these are building blocks. These are elements along that pathway, right? And understanding
Absolutely.
what you're wanting that user, that consumer to experience along the way, emotionally, and tying into their hierarchy of needs, right? At what point in time are they getting fulfilled for what that need is right there? Then you don't look at just the tactic. You look at all the things that you have in your basket of tricks to be able to connect to that emotional need right there. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. So, when I've done content strategy roadmaps and I'll do the the user path,
Mm-hmm.
and you deliver that to a client, and they're like, this is great. I've seen this before. I understand it.
Right.
It's not real to them, though.
Right.
But if you can highlight to them, hey, you know what? Your logo isn't expressing what it needs to express. Your employees, I've worked with brands that were paying the company I worked for tens of thousands of dollars a month, and we were doing everything pleasing to them and to us,
Mm-hmm.
and in the right way, but they weren't being successful. And when we quote unquote peeled back the layers of the onion, we realized that the people answering their phones were not doing a good job
Yep, there it is.
of passing those calls off. And it's like, whoa, no matter what we do, we're never going to be successful because the client's looking at the expense. He or she is not looking at what they need to do internally. But if we step back and say, okay, that's part of our job. That's part of the overall content experience. So for us, it was about creating a sheet that the person could read from because it was several people. It wasn't just one person responsible for these calls.
Mm-hmm.
And it was stepping back and understanding, looking at content marketing holistically, that everything has to be brought into this umbrella, and each part plays a viable role, a vital role.
Mm-hmm. No,
that's what I love. But you have to work with, for, and around people who buy into that and who believe in lasting success.
It absolutely is the key place where all content needs to be instructed by, and to be able to understand and be able to translate that and educate your client as a marketer that they have to. You're absolutely right. Holistically man all of the areas of your company's interaction with the consumer. Not for the customer service reps not to know what that consumer just experienced before they got to you, right? If they've been able to see your Twitter feed, and if they've experienced a white paper before giving you a call, and you can literally govern and push that user through certain channels so you can understand that they came from these areas, and then be ready to be able to pick up that consumer and go one more step into it with a full contextual knowledge of what they've experienced. That's just a level of maturity in business that needs to be accepted now. So how do we give them that level of education? How do we create that roadmap for businesses? Because we're seeing it regularly that, and no offense to any business out there, they are doing their work. They're doing what they do best. How do they get onto the track of the consumer content experience?
I think it's first realizing that it's beyond. It's going to take time. Right. It doesn't all have to be done at once.
Right. There you go.
One of the things I talk about, if a brand says, hey, I only have $500. I can only pay for one blog written, have one blog written. The other two have to come from internal. I'll think about that $500 being spent towards either the promotion of a piece of content or the creation of a potentially linkable asset.
Right.
Say it's a blog that points to a page that they like to see get more traffic, or it's a category they like to rank for. But making their money work as best as it can. But I think when you go in, it's almost. I used to wonder. I hate to have all these horrible analogies, but I used to wonder why doctors tell people how many months they have to live. Well, it turns out they don't. That's not how it comes out. The person pushes them so that they can live a full life as possible. And the doctor typically says, based on what we know and see, this is the expectation. Well, what I like to do is douse some cold water on them and say, here's where you are,
right,
and here's where you'd like to be. And in between, there is a lot of competition typically, right? And so instead of them focus on all the hard work they have to do, we focus on, here is you being successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that typically can get them to take their minds off of what's going to have to be done. However, there's no substitute for hard work. And what I tell brands, specifically when I do talks, when I do presentations, is you have to think of it in terms of someone's going to do this and be successful. Why not you? We see all these people, whether it's the LeBron James or the Tom Brady's or the Apples, and we don't realize, we're like, oh, I'd love to be that successful. Well, are you willing to do what it took? I mean, you're not them, so your success won't look like them. It's the same for a brand.
Right.
But are you willing to do all those things? Are you willing to shoot, millions of free throws a year, or, with Tom Brady, spend millions of dollars taking care of your body and not eat any meat? All these things. And that's where the rubber meets the road. It's what you're willing to do.
Absolutely.
And so for me, one of the reasons I stopped working with agencies is I want to be able to control. I want to be able to look at a brand in the face, a brand manager in the face, or a brand owner in the face, and understand what they're willing to do to be successful. Because a lot of times it's you say to them, here's where you are, here's where you'd like to be, and they express to you that they're willing to work, 10% hard enough to be successful.
And that's it.
And you're like, that's not going to get you where you need to be.
That's it right there.
If you're already thinking about what you're not going to do, that's not good.
That's the wrong mindset.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the argument is, are you willing to be successful? Are you willing to put in the work, put in the time, and put in the money to be able to do that? And that's the conversation that is the conversation that brands, companies need to have with the marketing firms or the internal marketers, right? It's not just to know what success is. It's to know how to get there and what discipline it takes and what you're not going to benefit immediately from, but the long-term yield is just going to be fantastic. I mean, it absolutely is exactly like the physical trainer analogy. So, Ronell, again, to our listeners who are watching live, this is Ronell Smith. What bugs you about your industry right now?
Right this second, the issue for me is content. I see.
We were just talking about content.
It bugs me because I feel like we're screwing it up. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're not doing it. Okay, let me clarify that. It's not a condemnation of marketers and not a condemnation of brands. It's more of we have to do a better job of harnessing our power.
Right.
Instead of saying, I say that I'm guilty of it, of focusing on what it is instead of what it does.
Mm-hmm.
When I see a brand is going to be, when one of the saddest facts of my life was when I started working with bigger brands with large internal teams. And it's like, my gosh, they have all this money. There's no reason they can be successful. They have all these pieces in place. And I can be the lead strategist and I can help. And if we screw up, they have all these people to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize it's based on where they are. Where they are has a lot to do with what they're willing to do, right? Kind of the same conversation. But also, there's so many internal battles that are being fought that are keeping them from being successful. And so for me, if you go in, if I go in and I say, hey, what's content mean to you? And they tell me, and there's usually some him and some ha, and here's what I think, here's what I don't think. But I express to them, here's what content is. But here specifically is what content does. It touches every area of your business. There's nothing you can't use it for. There's nothing you're not using it for. And if used correctly, it will enable your business to be successful. And they say, here's how, and they start walking through this sales stuff or this PR stuff and whatever that they think content doesn't touch. And I highlight for them that by doing this differently, by thinking about this differently, that they can likely be better successful. Because think about it, no brand wants to be unsuccessful. Everybody wants to find success in some meaningful way. And it's not my job to then say for them, you have to do this. They're not going to listen if I do. But if I can find some elements, because everything is content related, I can find some elements that I can be involved in that will enable them to be successful, then we all win. But I learned, this constant pushback, which I'm certainly been guilty of, this constant pushback of just being frustrated and beating my head against the wall or causing them to beat their head against the wall isn't going to help anybody.
Yeah, that doesn't help anybody. You're absolutely right. This has been fantastic, Ronell. You got a great bead on what's really important when it gets down to success and branding for a company. It's not about tactics. It's not about what it is. It's what it does, and how your consumer actually understands what you're putting out there in content. What really excites you about this industry right now?
The biggest thing right this second is something I'm calling customer experience.
Yeah.
I watched a presentation last year by a group of, it wasn't even online marketers, it's just marketing professionals, and they were talking about customer love.
Right.
And I thought about how, for me, the what it does that resonates. We talk about conversions all the time, and that's the one thing that everybody kind of gets, right?
Right.
That's ultimately that's what
Leads,
sales,
calls,
or phone calls,
sales.
whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And for me personally, if you delight somebody, I hear people talk all the time about this, the content glut, or the
Yeah.
content apocalypse and all this. And what I think people miss is if a person's happy with your product, it's not the case that they immediately say, "Hey, I love this. I'm going to go see what else is out there." They're usually pretty satisfied. Even if they're not satisfied, they're usually willing to say, "Hey, I'm going to stick with this till I find something better." And so when I think about customer experience as an extension of content strategy and content experience, it's literally where the rubber meets the road. It's literally what a brand sees.
Right.
And so for me personally, I think in terms of if we can highlight for them that if you want your customer to love you, here's the content experience you need to have. And to have that content experience, you need to have a content strategy in place. That makes sense to them, right?
Yep.
And it allows us to march back and you say, okay, this specific customer loves me. And you say, why? And then you say you're a coffee shop and you're like, they always talk about they love the mugs, or they love our logo, or they love our friendly service, they love our brochures, they love that we call them on their birthday. So that gets them to see that content experience. And then they understand that that's shaped by a content strategy. So to me, that's flipping the whole what something is and what it does to what something does to what it is.
Yeah. So and we've heard again, stay away from conversions. Don't use that as the final goal. And it gets back into instead of return on investment, it's that return on objective. And defining the objective first. What do you want to do? Well, I really want to have my clients have a good customer experience. That dictates content, and that dictates all the different areas in which your brand touches that consumer, not just a phone call. All that does lead up to a good quality phone call. All that does lead up to a good quality form fill, right? But if you're not paying attention to the objective first, I mean that's the mature mindset going into brand marketing and brand lift. Go after the objective, not just getting that ROI, because that ROI will come down the road, right?
Absolutely.
But it won't come if you're expecting. It's kind of like that pot that you're wanting you're staring at and seeing if it's going to boil.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Well, hey, to finish up, Ronell, we appreciate your time. Give us an amazing but true fact about yourself.
Amazing but true. I once jumped out of an airplane without a parachute. What I'm not saying there is I did have a guy on my back who had a parachute.
Oh, there you go.
Man.
See. Fantastic.
I wasn't sure if it was one of those things with the wings and you glided in and landed in a net.
No, those wind sleeps. Woo, that's some.
That's some crazy stuff right there.
Yeah, I tell you, I love. I'm a big. I was never in the military, but I'm a sniper fan. So I have owned several long distance shooting rifles.
Rock and roll.
And I've always been a huge gun person. I used to call myself a gun nut. I had to stop that.
We like you, Ronell. Absolutely.
So that's always been a fascination of mine. I grew up. People always say, "What did you want to be when you grew up?" And a scary fact that most people don't know was the first thing I ever wanted to be in my life was a Marine Scout sniper. There was something about the solitude. There was something about taking care of my brothers.
Yeah.
That appealed to me.
Fantastic.
And but the craziest, scariest thing I've ever done is jump out of an airplane.
Very cool. All right. Well, so is there anything that we can promote for you coming up here soon?
No, I'm working on a bunch of different projects that most of them are a while to be out, but just keep me on the radar, and I'll certainly do the same. You guys are doing an awesome job. Keep it up, man. It's this industry needs every industry needs something like you guys, but you guys do an awesome job and have created a must listen to podcast.
Thank you very much.
I mean that.
Well, we greatly appreciate that, and we're certainly going to be watching you. And whenever you need us to give you a lift, just let us know. We'll certainly send some social love your way. How do people follow you? How do they get a hold of you?
Easiest way to get a hold of me, I was going to say get rid of me, is at Ronell Smith.
I'm not trying to get rid of you.
That's usually what I'm thinking. I'm like, I'm the most boring guy in the world. What am I? But at Ronell Smith on Twitter. I'm not. I have Facebook. I don't use it. Google Plus. I'm weaning myself away.
I think everybody else has to, except for the Google employees.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But at Ronell Smith. I'm always on Twitter.
Very good. Well, if you're interested in what Ronell does and RS Consulting, give him a shout on his Twitter account. Check out, is it RS Consulting? What was the URL?
My URL is ronellsmith.com, Ronell Smith.com.
Oh, there we go. Very good. Very good. Check out his website and see what he's doing. He's always churning up information and good content over at Moz as well as his own site. And watch this guy because he's a rising star, and we really appreciate your insight into the brand concept and that it's a consumer content experience above all, and brands, companies need to understand they got to pay attention to that.